Welcome to Nairobi, and thank you very much for coming these 4 days to work with us together in thinking again what could be our best practice in the next years on the forced eviction chapter that it's so embedded in the UN Habitat agenda. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be with you here because I need to be in New York for the General Assembly. But I just wanted to pass to you some messages because we are in a very important moment in UN Habitat. We are in a kind of change period. And I think that it's important that you understand what we are doing and how are we going to face the next steps in UN Habitat. And of course, as I am totally committed to the UN agenda, and of course to the human rights as one of the big pillars of the UN political practice all over, and specifically of a proper shelter that affects directly UN Habitat. I must thank you for the work that you have been as this advisory group on forced evictions for all the time that you have served under the former executive director of UN Habitat. And I would like to transmit you that I'm really very willing on how we can, on the new context of the reforms that we are doing in Habitat, how we can go on and advance and go forward in the steps that already Habitat has acquired in this field. And again, thank you for your contribution as a worldwide experts on this issue. The evaluation that we are doing on UN Habitat, we are getting some consensus of the huge challenges that we have in front of us. Urbanization is here to stay. Urbanization is even increasing its pace. You know, all this talk about the 50% of the population living already in cities. 75% of the population will be living in cities in 20, 30 years' time. This year we are going to celebrate, during the next year, the fact that we humans, we already will reach the 7 billion population worldwide. Those are huge challenges in front of us. But the difficult part that we need to focus our attention is the extreme difficulties that least developed countries and poor countries are facing in the urbanization process. For example, if we look at sub-Saharan Africa, we are seeing that nearly 70% of the population lives in slums. And that the urban population in sub-Saharan Africa, just in the next 10 years, is going probably to double. And if we don't have ways to help the cities and governments to prepare for this change, this doubling will mostly come in form of additional slums. This is a humanitarian catastrophe because in slums what we are seeing is not just that basic standards of living are not improving, like health, vaccinations or access to water. It's not that they are not improving, they are worsening. They are worsening. And this is a dramatic situation. We cannot consider ourselves happy with things like they are now. This is why I'm trying to push now and reshake Habitat in order to energize ourselves, in order to face again this huge challenge. In this aspect, forced evictions are a calamity and something that on top of that we have even published some reports is not, again, that is not diminishing. It seems that it's increasing all around the world. And this is a huge problem which affects this basic human right. I think, and we are developing in new strategies in UN Habitat, mainly related to 3 lines of opening new windows. One is in the issue of urban planning and design. I am talking about urban planning because everybody knows what is urban planning, but also in urban design, because one of the things that we are identifying as something lacking is the specific design of the public space in the cities. It's not just like the strategic planning or even the master plan, which are something that at the plan scale you put normally in graphics at a scale of 1 to 150,000. But also what is lacking, it's the more detailed approach to where is the public space in my city, where I can provide a space for basic services, I can provide a space for the people to encounter themselves, and I can provide a space for mobility and access to the different parts of the city. This is why we are including urban planning and design, because this next step of having a clear view of how is the design of the city and the public space of the city is important. Urban planning has been criticized, and in most of the parts of the world it has been abandoned, and I think that we need to recover urban planning because without urban planning there's no the capacity to intervene in the design of the future fabric of the city, in the sense that we can order a more or less feasible way the future growth of the city. The other side that we are now going to increase in an important manner, it's in urban law, urban governance, and intervention of the public sector and the political institutions in the construction of a proper city. And of course, both in urban planning and in urban legislation and governance, it should be embedded, it should be included, the fact and the protection of the people against forced evictions. This is a must. You can have a bad plan for the city, you can have a regular plan for the city, and you can have a good plan for the city. And the good one is the one who takes into account not just the physical aspects, but also the political rights and the human rights that affects all the community. And in that sense, a proper governance, a proper legislation of the city and a proper planning of the city should have embedded the protection, not just the protection and the improvement of the conditions of the poor, and that it should be very, very clear. And then we have a third aspect of urban design, urban evolution for the future that we want to contribute ourselves also a little bit more, and is that how urban planning and urban legislation can help in the urban economy and the job creation. We are seeing not just that 70% or nearly 70% of the people is living in slums in sub-Saharan Africa. What we are seeing is that more than 60% of the youth on those slums are unemployed, or they don't have a proper, real, adequate job. This is another humanitarian catastrophe. And in that sense, we know for experience of urbanization process all over the world that the urbanization process can be an element of generating jobs and providing the opportunity for people to integrate in a much fuller sense in the prosperity wave which some countries are hopefully are going to see in the next phases. Then the process of urbanization should be seen, under my understanding, in a more holistic ways. It's housing, it's slum prevention, but also it has the other side, which is the enlargement of the city, the proper urban planning with protection to all the rights of the people, which will unblock the capacity of the societies to develop around the cities. The city, as always, have seen It's something that it can be managed, and I repeat that because I think that it's very important. In the case of the forced evictions, it can be managed in the bad manner, regular manner, or good manner. And I think that we need to help the willing governments to find out the proper manner of managing the change that is going to be needed in these cities. We need to say what is wrong. And we also need to find out good experiences and examples of how to do urban planning and urban development in a good and proper manner. If we do so, if we show the two sides, we are able to put the political organs of national, regional, or local in these circumstances under the dilemma to choose between the good and the bad. There's some kind of political attitude which says the urban process is so challenging that there's nothing that you can do. And this is a kind of protection that some people is using not to do better. And this is wrong. This is what I would like to address. I would like to show that yes, there are ways of doing things well. It's not that we say only that there's ways, unfortunately, very frequently, to do things wrong. But also, there are ways to do things well. And if you do things wrong, knowing that there are ways of doing things well, it's because you choose to do so. And then it's a political responsibility which you should assume. I think that this is the next challenge that we will have on not just on the forced eviction chapter, but also in the proper and sound urban planning and design in the future. We cannot contend and we cannot accept the fatality that the challenge of urbanization is so overwhelming that is nothing to do about it. No. This is to say that yes, there's a way to do a good and proper city, a just city, a city which cares for the poor, and a city which defends the rights of the people, and at the same time that it's feasible, it's sustainable, and even it's economically prosperous. And this is the way forward for us in order to be relevant in the approach to this very, very challenging subject. I am really very willing to hear from your work, and I'm sure that we will find not just a new way and a stronger way of advocating the good practices, even especially the good practices in front of the evictions in the future. And I count on your contribution to find out these ways. Thank you very much.